Good evening. Would you stand with me for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Councilman Rogers.
Let us pray. Our God, our Father in heaven, we are so thankful for this beautiful day that you've given to each of us. We thank you for all the blessings you've given to each of us here. We pray tonight that you'll be with us and guide us as we go about the business of the city. We continue to pray for those serving the armed forces abroad, serving in harm's way. Be with them, guard them, protect them. We also want to say for you to be with our Councilman Roger Bibby, and please be with those that are ministering to him so that he can be back and with us again. These things we pray in Christ's name, and amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Evans, would you join me with your guests, please? If it were only that easy. You have to come up front. Thanks for coming.
I didn't think you were ever that shy.
So it's my pleasure this evening to introduce to you the principal of Greenmont Elementary School, Mr. Brett Evans. And if you would you introduce the people that are with you?
Sure. We have Emily Schumann, who's in first grade this year. Kate Schumann, who teaches kindergarten. Melissa Morris, who's an interventionist, deals with kids with reading. Trish Ringer teaches first grade. Lacey Prather is one of our second grade teachers.
Thank you all for coming. You all, I hope, are aware of the fact that Greenmont has received an incredibly high award. There were only 3 schools in the entire state of West Virginia to receive the National Blue Ribbon Schools Award, and Greenmont is one of them. And so I'd like to read this proclamation for you all. Whereas the National Blue Ribbon Schools program is in its 37th year, honoring and celebrating high-achieving schools, and whereas Greenmont Elementary School has been named a 2019 National Blue Ribbon School, and whereas Greenmont Elementary School is one of 3 schools in the state of West Virginia recognized through this prestigious national program, and whereas Greenmont Elementary School is one of 362 schools nationwide to be selected for this impressive achievement, and whereas Greenmont Elementary School is a consistently high-performing school and is a reflection of tireless determination and dedication from all students, teachers, administrators, support staff, and parents. Now therefore be resolved that I, Mayor Randall C. Rapp, do hereby proclaim Friday, October the 11th, 2019 as Greenmont Elementary School Day, and encourage all citizens to recognize and celebrate the students, staff, and families of Greenmont Elementary School for this outstanding honor and its positive reflection on our school system and community. And thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Very impressive. Congratulations.
So, what would you like to say, sir?
Thank you.
Yeah, honestly, having grown up as a kid in another state and winding up in West Virginia, I couldn't have been more fortunate to wind up at Greenmont 13 years ago. The community is a terrific community. The city of Vienna is fantastic, from city council members, the mayors that we've had, chief of police, fire department. Fire department came out yesterday to school, passed out goodie bags to the kids. Kids go home excited about different things. Teachers got something yesterday. The city of Vienna is always putting things together for our public and our community to do. There's 250 different activities throughout the year the city puts on that you guys are working on, and it's a great place to raise a family, great place to live. Greenmont's a wonderful place for kids, and I couldn't be happier to be there. I love going to work, so to speak, because we get to work with great people. get to hang out with great kids. So, you know, we're very fortunate and blessed to be here, so it's a lot of work, but we love what we do.
Well, thank you all very much. It's incredible the work that you put in. As you all know, my daughter's a teacher, and I'll tell you, other than being a policeman, I don't know that there's a more stressful job than being a teacher. And so to receive the accolades that you've had and to see the smiles on the kids, I've had the opportunity to go up many times and participate in. It just has a very positive attitude, and I think that goes a long way. So what I'd like to do, Brett, is I would like to bring that to you tomorrow, about 10:30 in the morning. I'm going to bring a couple friends with me, and
Sounds great.
we'll see what we can do.
We
That's
love
all right
it.
with you?
We appreciate that.
All right.
Great.
Did you get your picture?
I did, I want their names.
I knew you were going to say that. You didn't get them
Pass
fast enough?
I tried, but I can't spell with both feet.
All right, well, you're gonna leave anyway, so, and I'm
I
sure,
will get with you.
I'm sure they wanna go do homework too, so if you would give her your name, so that would be good.
Well, thank you.
Tomorrow morning about 10:30?
Sounds great. Thank you.
We'll be there. Thank you all very much. We'll now move into our public forum. We have 3 people signed up this evening to speak. Lawrence Wilson.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Lawrence Wilson, 1312 10th Street here in Vienna. As some know, I'm a very, very strong proponent on freedom of speech. Very, very strong. I am also aware that at state and local levels, freedom of speech is under major attack almost daily. Public forums to me are very much a part of freedom of speech, very much. Now, I've got the new ordinance here, and I printed the West Virginia Code and also the West Virginia Ethics Guide to the West Virginia Code pertaining to general provisions respecting officers, Article 9A, open governmental proceedings. Now, having spent several hours in the last few days going over the Supremacy Clause of the United States, which means federal government trumps everything. First Amendment, rights 1, 4, and 5, which are irrevocable and inalienable by any other level by anybody. I've went through these 2 state laws or guides, and they are somewhat conflicting with the feds. And then we come down to this new ordinance, and I went through that, and looking at First Amendment, rights 1, 4, and 5, it would appear without too much question that this ordinance is not in compliance with those laws. Now, I put on my blog why I disagreed with what was on here, with one exception. And the final exception to me on why this ordinance is not legal is our item number 5 under public comment speaking at City of Vienna meetings. Actually, it's item 2A45 if you want to be exact. And it says, further, the presiding officer of any meeting, hearing, or procedure may, prior to beginning any meeting, hearing, or proceeding, suspend the public comment portion of said meeting. Well, what happened to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom to issue our grievances or our questions or our issues with our governing body? I believe that makes this superbly illegal at this point. It needs work. I am going to propose, with all due respect to the board, or excuse me, the council, that this thing either be voted down and worked on, or everything be left as it is until the state can bring state law more into compliance with federal law, which of course would then hopefully bring the state in compliance, or the city into compliance with the state. Thank you.
Jack Heater.
Good evening. My name is Jack Heater. I live at 4301 Sandalwood Place here in Vienna. I have comments on two items tonight. First, I want to speak on what personally affects me. I take my evening walk somewhere around the 7 o'clock hour in the evening, every evening. Normally walk the same path. On 3 separate occasions now, I've had or have been charged or approached by 3 large running at loose dogs. This has occurred at different places, 10th Avenue, 41st Street, and 8th Avenue. As the evenings are getting darker quicker, it is rather difficult to see large dogs approaching you, unknowing what these large animals have in mind, whether they're friendly, unfriendly. One never knows with that. Luckily, I have not been bitten, injured, or hurt. However, if I was perhaps a young child on a bicycle or on a skateboard, or perhaps an elderly person or anyone that has mobility problems, these large animals would approach them. Perhaps they would try to escape, be afraid of the dogs. They perhaps injure themselves by falling, getting hurt, or wrecking their bicycle. So I am really concerned about the animals running at large. In the city ordinance 507.02, it specifically addresses unleashed animals running at large. My suggestion is, and my recommendation for whatever it is worth, you all publish a nice newsletter. Perhaps in that newsletter, a reminder could be placed in that newsletter informing the public of the leash law for dogs. As a courtesy, I'm not, I don't say we need to come, blow with a hammer on anybody, but perhaps this would encourage. Maybe someone doesn't know this. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I've been very fortunate that I have not ever been attacked by one of the animals. But I don't know these animals. These animals don't know me. And it is rather frightening to be approached by, these are larger animals, not little ankle biter dogs. These are dogs that approach. And some of them come charging and some come wagging their tails, but that doesn't always mean they're not going to be friendly. So that's a suggestion I would like to make to the council. Perhaps they could address that some way. Maybe it's a friendly reminder to leash your dogs, keep your dogs leashed. So I'm speaking about dogs. Another pet peeve I have, I know we have a dog park, a nice dog park here in town. I don't have a dog, but I know people appreciate the dog park. However, there are still people that are playing ball with their dogs on the old ball field next to the community building in the evening. Unleashed dogs. That concerns me also. These dogs, again, have not injured anyone. But if we're going to have a leash law in town, it should affect everyone and everywhere except where it's accepted by the code. So that is number 1 point. Number 2, Mr. Wilson was really eloquent on his presentation on the ordinance about public forum speaking. I have a concern with that also. Not as technical as his, but a little the other way. I have no problem with the public forum being limited to 5 minutes per speaker. That doesn't bother me at all. I have no problem with signing in, no problem with that at all. The problem I have with is the 30-minute block of time is all public forums have to speak. 30 minutes prior to the council meeting. Unless I'm terrible in math, if everyone follows everybody right in order, that's 6 people on any given council meeting can address the board before you say, time's up, 30 minutes is up. I don't think there should be a time limit. I think as the council for the city of Vienna, you all are elected by us voters in the city. Where do we voice our ideas and concerns or our grievances if we do not come to these type of meetings? There may be occasions that there may be 10 people or 12 people, individuals that want to speak. And if you cut it off at 30 minutes, 6 people. So what does that do? That kind of takes your freedom away of expressing your opinion on that given evening. So I would like for the councilors to, when they're revisiting this, perhaps not be too concerned on this 30-minute time limit. I know we all like to go home, but folks, you all asked for my vote. And as that courtesy, you should extend to me whatever time it takes you all to sit through our grievances and concerns to listen to us. And I do not believe 30 minutes is long enough. Thank you for listening. Have a good evening.
Brenda?
Good evening. My name is Brenda Pound. I live at 1409 31st Street here in Vienna. I was approached by an individual that had some concerns regarding the paving that's been done here in Vienna recently. I didn't know whether or not they had asked. Well, they had asked me and I couldn't answer it. And maybe you can help us with that. Is that are there inspections that are done at the time of the paving, after the paving is finished per area? So that's something that is needing to be answered for this person. They were curious about that, wanting to know. There are also some things that they pointed out regarding the blacktop over the grate edges and the sewer covers, that it could be an issue with access if they ever need to get into them, that the blacktop would have to be taken out around those areas and then it would be needed to be repaired. These some of the areas don't slope like they should, and a concern also that the water is not going to be draining properly in regards to it. That and the fact of the cold weather, the rain, the snow, and freezing, that could cause the blacktop to crack or could become brittle. These are some of the things that was said to me. Where the blacktop meets the driveways, it isn't sealed, and it's causing it to loosen easily, and uneven seams at the avenues where they meet the street. The thing that was said to me also is that the quality of the paving at this time seems to not meet the prior paving that has been done. So I did say that I would get up and say something in regards to it, and that the money that is being spent for the paving, I didn't know whether there's inspections being done, but there are photographs, and it's a possibility that they'll be dropped off, for review if there hasn't been. So that's something I wanted to bring forth. You have any questions or anything, comments?
If you would ask whoever spoke to you to call me, I will be glad to talk to them.
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. But like I said, they had said something about that they could drop off pictures
That's fine.
and for review, in case something was missed or whatever. Thank you.
I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for October the 10th, 2019. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll, that all members of council are present with the exception of Councilman Bibby. Having a quorum, we will proceed. The minutes from the regular council meeting held on September the 12th, 2019 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no objections, then the minutes will stand approved as posted. Report of the Treasurer, Councilman Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. I have in front of me the reconciliation funds for City of Vienna dated October 7, 2019. I've reviewed the accounts. They appear in order, and the city is fiscally sound.
Thank you, sir. We have no unfinished business this evening, so moving into new business. The first item on our agenda this evening is a bid approval from the Parks Department for the Christmas light display. Seal, would you like to do those, Jim? You have those?
Sure, I have them in front of me.
Thank you.
Mayor, I was in court all day. Sealed bids for the purchase of custom Christmas light display were opened on September 27, 2019 at 10 a.m. with the following results. Ferraz Welding LLC, $19,500 is the only bid that was received. After careful review of the bid proposals, the recommendation of council for approval from the Budget and Finance Committee for the purchase of a custom Christmas light display is Ferraz Welding for $19,500. Funding for this project will be from the city's general fund pending council approval. And amount of funding request will be for the entire project.
This project was included in the budget as it was presented. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the sealed bid from Farrell Welding for $19,500.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the bid for the purchase of the custom Christmas light display from Farrell's Welding for $19,500. Is there any discussion?
It is a budgeted item.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, yes, at the sake of sounding bah humbug, I like going around and looking at Christmas lights with my family just as much as the next person. But when it comes to expenditures for the city, you know, I'm a firm believer that we have wants and we have needs. I think this certainly falls in the line of a want and not a need. You know, it's one of those deals that's going to be up a couple of months out of the year. A family may drive and look at that set of lights one time, maybe look at it in passing after that. So as much as I like Christmas and as much as I respect that holiday, at this point in time, I cannot go along with this expenditure until some of the more serious needs that we have has been addressed versus a want.
Yeah, I'd reiterate what you're saying. It's I think the Parks and Rec have done a great. Steve Black's done a great job with what he's added to the city, with the basketball new post at Spencer Park. You know, the frisbee golf course is coming up. The tennis courts, at pickleball, things like everything's been great. He's done a great job. As far as to spend $19,500, I know it's been budgeted, but it's a way to. You're always looking a way to save money and trim costs. I think at this time, it'd be a good idea to vote no, just because, you know, it's 2 months out of the year. I think about all the stuff that's going on with our city, how far $19,500 could go as compared to buying more Christmas lights. I think they did a good job with our Christmas light, all the things that we do for Christmas. And like I say, I'm all about Christmas and what it means and the lights with my kids and stuff. But $19,000 is a lot of money for a display. For, you know, we talk about return on investment, and this is not there.
Well, I guess we're weighing in on priorities. You know, I'll look at it this way. The Christmas light program, everybody has their priorities. You know, you mentioned pickleball, you mentioned sports. You're very interested in that. You know, Roger, you talk about infrastructure and all of those areas in our 5-year plans, and I get that. But this has also been a part of the quality of life issue for the city of Vienna. We continue to get, it's always about what kind of return does the city get in the dollars that we invest from our taxpayers. And as we get not only citizens of Vienna, and I mean, Ogilvy Park, everybody, I mean, people drive from miles to visit Ogilvy Park. And you're right, it's a seasonal holiday, it's a seasonal effort, but this is not just popped up. This is something that's been an ongoing program for the city. It's received support for the community. It's been thought out, budgeted, approved, and it's been approved by the Finance Committee. And for all of those reasons, again, different council members have different priorities on what they think are important, but this is not just an out of the blue type of a project. Steve Black has been working diligently to continue to improve this this part of the city of Vienna, and it's getting a lot of attention, and people like to come and visit. And like I say, with respect for the holiday of Christmas, I'm in support of it.
Is there any further discussion? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the sealed bid for the purchase of the custom Christmas light display from Farrell Welding in the amount of $19,500, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion fails. 3-3. Next item on our agenda this evening is a resolution asking the Vienna Utility Board to include public comments in their meetings. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it hereby requests that the Vienna Utility Board consider allowing public comment during their regular meetings. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution asking for the Utility Board to include public comments.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No, I would just like to say that, I really don't see a good reason not to do this. I can see a lot of reasons not allowing it to happen. I mean, this is something that I think we do have freedom of speech, and we are all, whether it's mayor, recorder, or council members, we're hired by the citizens of Vienna. We're hired to do a job to represent those citizens. I think we owe it to those citizens to hear their voice. We need to hear their voice, and we need to react as the best we can to what's in the best interest of those citizens, and not to allow for a public forum. To me, it just totally, it boggles my mind that we would say no. There's just, in my mind, not a reason not to do this. So I would urge all of you on council, and I fully understand that this is a utility board issue. I understand that as things are today, this council cannot vote to do that. But I am asking all of the council members to allow our citizens to use their freedom of speech to address any of the needs, any of the concerns that they have, to whether it's the utility board or whether it's to us. There again, I urge all of you to really think about this. It's their fundamental right.
Mr. Skog said, I'd like to ask a question, please. Sure. Since Mr. Rogers and I both serve on the utility board, it's my opinion that we should abstain from this vote.
That's your choice. I mean,
I'm asking you because I don't want any questions. I mean, ultimately, it's going to come before us.
I know that I am a member of the utility board, you are, and another person here in the audience, but this doesn't say it's mandatory. It
No,
just
sir.
says it's be considered,
Yes.
and it's never been brought up to the utility board as a motion or anything like that.
Okay.
So I don't think we have to abstain because it says consider. It doesn't say it's mandatory.
Correct. In your opinion?
my opinion, you are not required to abstain because you're a member of the utility board. They're two separate entities. However, if you were to vote, that may give the utility board an idea as to what your opinion is on the issue of whether or not to have a public forum without the rest of the utility board being able to consider, debate, talk, and mull the issue over themselves. So if you vote, I don't want to say you're showing your hand, but you would be considering an issue that the rest of the utility board, because they're not able to discuss it amongst themselves with you in the confines of the utility board, would know what your opinion is prior to their deciding, and it could influence their decision.
Okay, just to clarify that, it's my intention to vote yes to pass this to the utility board. I honestly think it's their decision to make. It's, these are like committee meetings, although the utility board has more authority than that. So if I'm permitted to vote, I'm going to vote yes, because I want the utility board to decide this issue.
There's nothing that prevents you from voting on the issue. My warning remains the same. The utility board could meet. They already have an idea of how you feel as far as recommending the issue. Whether or not that's what your recommendation would be with the utility board is something else.
But the choice is yours, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay.
And I would like to add too, the resolution as it's written, I understand it, but I'm asking that this vote not just be to send it to the utility board. I'm asking that this vote says that this council supports the decision to have public forum at the utility board meetings.
Well, your ordinance doesn't state that. It says consider.
That was what I requested at our last meeting, that we vote to support. I understand, that's why I'm bringing it up now. That's not what I asked to be put on the agenda. I asked that the council support, I asked that the council support the decision.
So would you like to amend your ordinance, Mr. Conley?
I would
Your
like to
resolution,
amend
excuse
that
me.
resolution, please.
And how would you like it to read, sir?
I would like a resolution in support of the Vienna Utility Board, including public comments in their meetings.
I have a second. Question, not a second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we amend the ordinance?
No, there's no
No,
second.
he had
Oh,
a
I'm
second
sorry.
question. He wasn't seconding the
Okay, I'm
motion.
sorry. I thought you said you were seconding,
We
Bruce.
gotta,
Okay, so Mr. Conley's made an amendment.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
now you can discuss it if you need to. So you're gonna strike consider and just put, how would you like it worded?
I would like it worded that we're voting to support the
Utility board
decision to have the public forums, correct?
to have.
You know, let me just throw this out real quickly. I know the utility board is out of the realms of the council. But let me just expand on that, or expound on that just a little bit. As it stands right now, the council basically works out of the general fund. And anybody, when I say something incorrectly, please correct me. That is within the realms of city council. When it comes to the utility board is working out of the enterprise fund. But I believe, and correct me here if I'm wrong, the Vienna Utility Board and the enterprise fund does not have a separate banking account. Am I correct in making that statement? And with that being said, receivables coming into the city, whether it be a water bill or a sewer bill, is monies that is used by the utility board and the enterprise fund, but goes into the same bank account. The expenses that are paid out of the same account, whether it would be a enterprise water sewer issue, or whether it would be a parks or a streets issue. We have a situation where the finance committee that we have that approves sending items from the finance committee to council for approval is also the same finance committee that sends items from the finance board to the utility board for consideration. We have a department head that is over the water and the sewer department, which operates out of the enterprise fund, but he's also the same department head that is over the streets department, which operates out of the general fund. So, you know, I think this is something that at some point in time needs to be taken a serious look at. But at the same time, you know, we hear that the council has nothing to do with the utility board. Well, think about what I just said, folks. Understand your points, but I think that we, at least at this point in time, need to at least support the public forums at the utility board for you folks to speak your minds.
One comment. Mr. Leach deals with finance. He just talked about reconciliation of funds. In reconciliation of funds, it has listed government, general, budget, also has special revenue, coal severance, access levy, capital reserve, donations to PNR, then it has proprietary, there's enterprise, water, unrestricted water, reserve sewer. So if I pay a water bill, it doesn't come in our general fund. It goes into the fund line item that it says dealing with water.
Line item.
Okay, line item. I don't care if it has the same bank account or not. It goes into that line item. So yes, the utility board does have that over that department. It doesn't have anything to deal with the general fund at all. It does have with the enterprise fund. So yeah, the money is separate. It's not here. It doesn't go into the police retirement fund or whatever. It goes into that line item. So object to that. But getting back to the question as far as this is concerned, and we need to vote on the amendment, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if people want to speak at the utility board or not, and I'm on the utility board. So I really don't care. I mean, that's up to them, but it has nothing to do with basically the financial reconciliation, where our funds go or not. But it still has to do with this public being able to speak publicly.
Mr. Conley, I'd like to explain to you, the argument that you present doesn't hold any water simply because the line items that you reference, they separate everything that there is by account and by department. The fact that the money all runs through one account is simply because we're a small city. And if you would like to be like some of the larger cities and hire separate accountants and separate finance people and all of that to run the enterprise fund and the water and sewer department, that would be so cost prohibitive for a city our size that it's just not worth it, when it's simply that we have outstanding accounting people that do the finances and keep them separated so that our audits have been spotless for 30 years. We've run into an issue with the bond covenant, but it has fixed itself, and by next year we'll be gone. But that had nothing to do with accounting. And so your argument that this is all the same does not hold water. It is the same argument that you tried to use on the police department fee, that it was not a separate item. So in order to satisfy you, we've established a separate police department line item for that. So at any time that you wish to review that, you can call that line item up and you can see exactly where that police department fee is now located. So it's a matter of prudent use of our dollars, and the fact that we've had an established system that's been this way for years, and it works extremely well. And so I do not see the need to hire additional people to do the same work that we're doing right now.
Let me clarify the point that I was trying to make. I totally understand how those line items work, and I totally understand that the money, even though it's all going to the same account, is separated by a line item. The point I was trying to make simply is that on one page of the book that we read out of, the council and the utility board and the enterprise fund and the general fund does coexist. But there comes a point in time when you choose that there is no consideration as far as the council is concerned dealing with the utility board or vice versa. Each one of them is a standalone entity. Well, one day we're together and we coexist, and the next time, depending on what the issue is, we don't.
If I could interject.
Well, I'd like to say this. First of all, I don't know anyone that knows anything about the Planning Commission unless there's people here from the Planning Commission. But it was a law that we established a Planning Commission. It was also a federal law that we established a utility board, and we did that. And if we hadn't have, we would have been fined thousands of dollars like the town of Morgantown in West Virginia. And truthfully, it wasn't easy to try to get this board and the rules and regulations set up for it. And it was demanded that we set it and do it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had it unless the federal government had told us to do that. And I know you haven't been here long enough to understand that it was demanded of us as a council to do or establish a utility board.
Mr. Skogstad, your comment, please.
Briefly. All right, just so that there's no confusion for the public. The city of Vienna used to operate all the water and sewer projects at I don't know, 8, 9 years ago, however many years ago it was. The city elected to create the Vienna Utility Board, and they gave them certain powers and authorities by ordinance, a certain power and authority by ordinance. One of the things the utility board was put in exclusive dominion and control over was the enterprise fund. West Virginia state law says projects, water, sewer, what have you, those expenditures can only come out of the enterprise fund. The projects, the streets, the general operations and day-to-day maintenance of the city, those are limited solely to the general fund. And as far as the money going into the same account, it's essentially the same as all of the money goes to the same bank. However, this X number of dollars can only be spent from that pile of money on enterprise projects, and if you don't do it that way, you're in trouble with the state. Y number of dollars can only be spent from the general fund on general city projects. If you don't do it that way, you get in trouble with the state. So, and then lastly, we share expenses, and I think that was a pragmatic decision that the city council made several years ago, which was we have one finance director. That person basically looks at the books and makes sure that the money that is spent from the enterprise fund only goes to water and sewer projects. The money that is spent from the general fund only goes to city-centric projects. But for all intents and purposes, they are two separate legal entities. For a period of time, those entities were worked a little closer hand in hand, which was not what my recommendation was. My recommendation is and has been that the two entities operate separately as far as the expense, well, more separately than what they were. But they also share, because we live in a city, because Vienna is a city of 10,000 people, they share things. We're going to spend this much money from the enterprise fund for a truck. We're going to contribute this much money for a truck, and then both of the units are going to have access and use it. We have an employee that works this many hours for the board. We have the same employee that works this number of hours for the city, and they share the cost of the employee because it doesn't make sense to hire two guys to work in two separate places to do a job that one can do. And it's just the most practical way for dealing with it. That has nothing, at this point, I would ask that we just go back to dealing with our amendment and our First Amendment public comment issue, because we've meandered off course.
I'll call for the question on the amendment. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it hereby requests that the Vienna Utility Board Tom, say that, how do you want to?
I think he said vote in
Support of.
That it hereby requests the Vienna Utility Board to consider allowing public comment during their regular meetings, and the council of the city votes in support of that. That's a little wordy.
Got your point across, though, I think.
Okay. I'll call for the question. All those in favor, well,
Of the amendment.
well, but we're amending that, but in actuality, I've stated the ordinance that it is. Okay, so what the amendment is to change the language from consider to add the clause during their regular meetings in support of the recommendation. We're going to add that to the bottom of the ordinance or the resolution. All right? Does that satisfy you, Mr. Skogstad?
Sure.
Great. All right. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. All right. So now we'll do the resolution. The resolution says, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it hereby requests that the Vienna Utility Board consider allowing public comment during their regular meetings and the Vienna City Council supports that recommendation. Okay. I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the resolution asking the utility board to include public comments in their meetings and that this council is supporting that decision, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? 42. It'll be on the next agenda for the utility board, which will be the third Friday in November. No, it'll be the third Friday of October. We're still in October.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Next item on our agenda this evening is the appointment of J. Morgan Leach to the Vienna Planning Commission. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna as a resident of the city for at least 1 year prior to this appointment, the following individual is hereby appointed to the City of Vienna Planning Commission for a full and regular term. This will be the replacement for Mike Hayden. This opening has been on the Planning Commission for a year, I believe, and so this will be the replacement for Michael Hayden. So I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution appointing J.
Hold on.
Morgan Leach to the City of Vienna Planning Commission.
Hold on, before we go into motions and discussion, Mr. Leach, in case you didn't know, is young Mr. Leach's father.
Hi, son.
He, I would ask that under the West Virginia Code of Ethics, I'm turning into a lawyer. Under the Ethics Act, under the Open Meetings Act, you need to recuse yourself by leaving the room for the vote. Please.
Bye, son.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution appointing J. Morgan Leach to the City of Vienna Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
That good? Second. You're a second.
I'll second.
There you go. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution appointing J. Morgan Leach to the City of Vienna Planning Commission. Is there any discussion?
How long did you say the term was for, Mayor? Is this to finish out a term, or is this a new term?
Until you die, usually.
Yeah.
That is pretty much it. I mean,
Amen.
honestly,
It's a set term,
It's kind of young.
but pragmatically, it's until you die.
yeah. Usually it's as long as you're willing to serve. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult to get people to serve on these boards. But at any rate,
Before we go, there are a couple of statutory requirements, and I want to ask the question before you vote. One is, I know young Mr. Leach is also an attorney, so I think he satisfies paragraph D, meaning that he represents an area of interest and expertise that would be beneficial to the commission. And I think as a barred attorney, he has certain knowledge and experience that would help the municipality. But really, the question I have is, does Mr. Leach, has he been a resident of the city for at least 3 years? Young Mr. Leach.
Yes.
Okay.
all right. Okay. Any further discussion? And I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the resolution appointing J. Morgan Leach to the City of Vienna Planning Commission, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Welcome. Thank you for serving. We need to get young blood in, and so we appreciate your efforts. All right, thank you.
If somebody wants to let Jim back in. We've got some bad news for you. He was voted in.
I'll
Item-
get my hammer.
Yeah. Item number 4 is an ordinance on first reading approving the replacement pages to the 2019 codified ordinances. Congratulations, you're a winner.
First time I've heard that.
Yep.
All right. This is an ordinance to approve the 2019 replacement pages to the codified ordinances. Whereas certain provisions within the codified ordinances should be amended to conform with current state law, and whereas various ordinances of a general and permanent nature have been passed by council, which should be included in the codified ordinances, and whereas council has heretofore entered into a contract with the Walter H. Drain Company to prepare and publish such revision, which is before council. Now therefore be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that Section 1, the ordinances of the City of Vienna, West Virginia, of a general and permanent nature is revised, recodified, rearranged, and consolidated into component codes, chapters, articles, and sections within the 2019 replacement pages to the codified ordinances are hereby approved and adopted. Section 2, the following sections and articles are hereby added, amended, or repealed as respectively indicated in order to comply with current state law. I'm not going to read all of the numbers. I'll read the titles, and if anybody wants to look at them, they're on the website. Traffic code, driving under the influence, amended. Special stops required, penalty, amended. Under the general offenses code, obstructing or giving false information to an officer, amended. Liquor control definitions, amended. Prohibited acts generally, amended. Unlawful unlawful sale or possession by alcoholic liquor licensee, amended. Intoxication or drinking in public places, amended. Acts prohibited by non-intoxicating beer licensee, amended. Acts prohibited by private club licensee, amended. And Section 3, pursuant to West Virginia Code 811-4B, a notice of the proposed adoption of the current replacement pages to the City Code shall be given by publication as provided in West Virginia Code 811-4A2. Through authentication of this ordinance, the mayor shall certify the current replacement pages to the City Code, which shall be filed as a permanent record in the office of the city clerk. This ordinance shall take effect immediately upon passage.
These are the same replacement pages that we approve every year. They bring our ordinances into compliance with state code and whatever changes have occurred through council action in the past year. I'll entertain a motion for the approval on first reading of the ordinance to approve the 2019 replacement pages to the codified ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve on first reading the ordinance approving the replacement pages to the codified ordinances. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say that out there for your information that we have a contract with Walter Drain, and they go through the laws and everything that is passed at the West Virginia State Legislature and on the federal level, and they look through our ordinances, and with those laws, if they are against what we say or ours is not doing what they want us to do, then they do this and we approve it as a way of as far as a state or federal law. So anything that's in the city, I mean, we have to agree with the state or the federal laws if that be the case, and they do keep us apprised of these laws.
I want to note also, this is the first reading on this. It will require another reading. After that second reading, I will notify Walter Drain and they will update the website. So that website will not be updated until we have a second reading on the ordinance.
Correct, because we haven't accepted the pages yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? I'll call for the question then. All those in favor on first reading of the ordinance to approve the 2019 replacement pages to the codified ordinances, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries 6-0. Last item on our agenda this evening is an ordinance on first reading, setting forth and adopting rules governing the public comment period of all City of Vienna public meetings. Mr. Skogstad, would you preface this, please?
This is essentially the same ordinance with the exception of the last paragraph that we presented last time, which I recommended against and which council voted against. But it essentially sets out the rules. It sets out the rules that the United States Supreme Court, well, the Constitution, 200 years of review by the United States Supreme Court, and the interpretations as is set out by the various district courts across the country, and as are set out in the limited interpretations that the West Virginia Supreme Court have said. And they essentially are, if you have a public forum in West Virginia, you can't be required to sign up more than 15 minutes. You can't be required to sign up more than 15 minutes before the public forum part of the hearing. You have to comport yourself in a way that is not disruptive of the hearing, and there have been various interpretations of what disruptive behavior is.
It sets a time limit. I understand that there's been some concern that the time limit is too short. There's nothing in the ordinances that says that mayor or council can't extend the time period for public forums. And I suppose you could have one ad nauseum. But that was a pragmatic issue, being as we deal with issues that generally aren't so controversial as to result in 500 people coming, but I'm sure that could be accommodated, and so forth. So it's essentially the rules that we are operating the public forum under now, except it forces the city to make that apply to all public meetings that are held in addition to council. So if you wanted to come to speak in front of Budget and Finance, you could. If you wanted to come and speak at the Tree and Beautification Committee, you could, and so forth. So that's essentially what the ordinance lays out now. If you want my opinion, I'm certainly willing to give you that as well.
And your opinion is, sir?
My opinion is, as a staunch libertarian, I don't like to add rules where we don't need them. We already have guidance on how to conduct public hearings. The Budget and Finance meeting is an advisory body that simply reviews documents and refers them to City Council. The Tree and Beautification Committee is a collection of citizens who, because they are very generous with their time, come to meetings and help do things to benefit the city. The police fire pension, or the police fire, the police officers retirement pension board, and all the others are advisory opinions. They, to some degree, they make the planning commission is in a sense an advisory body. If people want to actually have an effect on what they want to do to get done or to voice their opinion, this is the place to do it. Adding a rule, an additional rule that simply codifies what your rights are when you have a public forum is not necessary. It is my opinion that advisory boards don't need the input of the public. That's not what their intent is. However, because I don't want people to think that I'm anti-First Amendment, and I'm pro-Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment as well. Fourth being your right against search and seizure, Fifth being your right to have a trial, right to not incriminate yourself, and the Sixth being your right to have a fair and speedy trial and the right to counsel as well. You don't need it. You're already governed by 200 years of state or of federal and state law cases and decisions. I am not a big fan of public forums in general because I think that at one time they served a purpose. And in some respects they still serve a purpose, but the people that take advantage of them generally resolve their issues in a different way. It's very rare that we get a gentleman like the fellow in the back here in the red shirt who came down and voiced an actual problem with the city that he had that the city could address, as opposed to the Facebook generation that is essentially just comes down to complain about things and would be better spent having their time on planning commissions and being part of the Tree and Beautification Committee and so forth, as opposed to just complaining about things, which is what public forums have turned to. You have the right to protest out front. You have the right to do a lot of things, but my legal opinion is that it's not necessary. You already abide by it, and you're just adding an additional rule that you don't need.
Bruce, if you'll wait just one moment, I'll go to you first, okay? What I'd like to do is I'd like to read the ordinance. Let's get the motion in the second, and then we'll have discussion. Okay, we'll do this in proper form. So it's an ordinance on first reading, setting forth and adopting rules governing the public comment portion of the Vienna City Council meetings. I'll entertain a motion for the approval on first reading of this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve on first reading the ordinance setting forth and adopting rules governing the public comment period. Bruce.
I disagree with Mr. Wilson. I know that I wish this were a little more restrictive and dealt more with the problems that we have here in the city or what's on the agenda. I don't need someone to get up and tell me that President Trump needs to be whatever, impeached, or Pelosi is going crazy. I don't need that. I would like to hear more about what's going on in the city. But I would like this from Mr. Skogstad. You said that in section 2, number 7, it says the total time of the public comment portion of any proceeding shall not exceed 30 minutes. Right before that, it says the time of the public comment shall not exceed 5 minutes per speaker unless more time is granted by the presiding officer. So if the presiding officer would see on that clipboard 12 people, I assume that would be their right to extend it to 5 minutes for the 12 or extend that 30-minute time period if the presiding officer would want to. Is that right?
Yes, they can, and if you need to clarify the language, you can just amend it now to clarify it to allow the presiding officer the authority to extend that. But I've always read it as the presiding officer could extend it to however much length they need it.
Okay, then I would move to an amendment to allow that presiding officer to have the option to extend the 30-minute time period if necessary.
I think that's what the language already says, Bruce.
Well, that's what I thought too, but
The only thing is if the second clause that Russ put in there of the time period applies to normal meetings where if there's only 3 people, okay?
right, that's no problem. Then it's 5 times 3 is 15.
Okay.
So that's
Right.
less than 30. I understand
Right.
that. But if there is 12 people like here tonight that want to speak, I mean, just like our person that got up to speak against the, cutoff, I think the 30-minute cutoff, if there's 12 people, that the presiding officer should be allowed to do or extend that time period if they want.
Okay, this is only the first reading of this ordinance.
Right.
If we get through the first reading of this and we need to tweak this in order to clarify any of the clauses that are in it, we'll clean it up on the second reading,
Okay.
all right?
I-
'Cause
yeah.
it won't pass without the amendments made.
If it passes after the first reading and you have changes that you would like to make, please forward
Then
them
it
to me
takes 2
so
more
that I can.
Okay.
Yeah, it would take one more, but please forward them to me so that I can draft versions of the ordinance that would be that do what you want.
So make sure I have this clear. We're going to vote on this tonight, first reading, basically as it is, because I do have some things that I would like to see changed as well, but we'll have the opportunity to do that after we vote on this first reading, if approved.
Correct,
Okay.
okay? So I guess I'd like to make my comment. We have had the public forum now for a long time.
Yeah.
We went through this entire discussion a year ago, and Mr. Skogstad's comments are correct. I personally do not see making more rules that restrict whatever. We have had a good experience with the public forum. No one has been denied the right to speak. I think the leeway that is afforded by the way we do it now, I agree with Jack on his comment about, if we did have an issue that was of major importance, I certainly would allow the time. I'm still going to think that 5 minutes is more than enough time for you to express your opinion. But if there were 12 people or 10 people that wanted to speak, then we certainly should hear whatever their comments are. I'm not in favor of, just opening the floor and giving you 15, 20 minutes to do that. But I do believe that everyone that wants to be heard should be heard. It's the comments like Jack made tonight about the dog. We do publish the newsletter, and unfortunately, the newsletter has already been published. If you didn't get it in your mail today, you may get it tomorrow. But I can't get it in there, Jack, but I'll certainly be glad to work with Chief Pfeiffer or Russ and get the reminder in there that, you know, we do have leash laws and all those things. It's good to remind our people of that. So I thank you for your comments, and I will take care of that. It may not be in this one. The next one won't come out until January because we only do it quarterly, but those are the issues that I like hearing those, okay? And so no matter what happens with this ordinance, it's still my intention that the public forum will stay. I think it is an important part. Some people do have issues that they wish to express in council, and typically if they come before council, it's something that's very important to them. So I like that. And the other thing is, when you get a person that will come to council to express their opinion, then everyone on council is aware of whatever that problem is. If you recall, a few weeks ago, Bruce Stauffer came in and he talked about the drainage issue that's occurring up on 7th Avenue. Well, we've dealt with that thing for a long time now, but now you all are aware of it. You saw the video, you saw the severity of that. I like that because now you know that we as a council need to do something in order to fix that situation. And so I encourage the public forum. I think it's a great thing. I just honestly think that the system that we have working now is fine. And at the time that we put that in or turned the other ordinance down, you know, I made a commitment to you all that we would do it, and we have, and we will continue to do it. But I do not believe that adding another ordinance to make it more restrictive or whatever is going to benefit the public forum process one bit.
I guess I have missed something here. I don't know for sure what you're talking about. Maybe you can explain to me, making it more restrictive. We already have the public forum here in council, and I agree. I think it's going well, and I'm glad that you intend to keep that, Mayor. But there again, I don't know what we're talking about to make more restrictive. My thoughts on this, and as the way I've intended the ordinance to be, was that be expanded, and that we allow that very successful public forum to be used in, for example, the budget and finance meeting. And that just, there again, I'm going to repeat what I said a little bit ago. I don't see any good reason not to do that. I don't go to every budget and finance meeting. I go to most of them. I've been to a lot of them. It's not uncommon that a budget and finance meeting lasts 5-10 minutes and everybody's up and gone. So adding a few minutes for a public forum absolutely is not going to hurt anybody, and it's certainly going to go a long ways toward transparency and toward allowing the people in the community that voted for us and elected us to be more involved in the process. So, you know, I'm not looking to make anything more restrictive. I'm looking to take what has been successful and expand upon that.
Well, your comment about hidden things doesn't hold water because everything that Budget and Finance does is referred to council for approval. So there is nothing that gets to the Budget and Finance Committee that is not approved by City Council. This hidden agenda that you refer to just simply does not exist.
And I'll apologize because I certainly didn't mean to infer that there was a hidden agenda. I just happened to use the word transparency. It just helps to open up the fact of what we're doing to everybody and give them an opportunity to talk. I'm not insinuating that the finance company is doing something under the table or shady. I'm just simply saying that these meetings last 5 or 10 minutes, and for crying out loud, if the public that voted for us wants to have 5 minutes of our time, you know, and there's not that many people that comes to the Budget and Finance meeting. My question is, why not? If that's what the people wants, for crying out loud, that's what they voted for us for, let's do it.
I'm going to follow up. You know, and I'm just going to dovetail on what you just said. You know, if that's what the people want. Russ talked about the system that's in place, and I've been thinking about this since it was proposed that we open up these committees. And I was in federal court today, and when you're in federal court, it's different than state court. Federal judges have life tenure. They are the law, and they give me a scheduling order, and you follow it. And those are the procedural rules, okay? If you don't get your witnesses in time, your witnesses don't testify. Whatever it might be, those are simply the rules that we run by. That's different than the substantive rules that the legislature drafts that says this is the way you conduct yourself. So when I hear this proposal of let's open these advisory committees who simply, our job on budget and finance, planning commission, whatever it is to receive the information, open the bids, just like we had with the paving, to make sure they comply with the rules, all right, and that everything is in order to forward to council for consideration. It is here that the public has the opportunity and the right to discuss what it is that these advisory committees have said, that's all our job is. Is this in order to put forward to council? So creating a public comment, when I hear this, it's like almost a whim, because I say, well, why? What research have you done? What have you brought forward, Roger, to say this is the reason other than, well, we got voted in and the people this is what they want? Well, nobody's called me and said that what they want. And even if they did say that, I say, I was elected to exercise my judgment. And my judgment is there are procedural rules to make sure our function is to make sure that if before it gets to council, it complied. That's all our job is. Did they submit the bid? Did they put the bid bond? Did they do this? Did they do that? If so, is a recommendation. Do we have enough bids? Do we comply procedurally? Once it clears that hurdle, then it comes to this council, to this public forum, and this is the opportunity, in addition to all the other free speech rights, Russ mentioned social media, whatever it is. So I have not heard a good reason to change the system, because there's a term in the law called stare decisis, let the decision stand. And the idea in the law is, unless you have a good reason, and the law does evolve but slowly, okay, and it does. Unless you have a good reason to change something, don't change it and break it. If it's not broken, right, you've all heard that. So for those reasons, I've not heard anything at all that persuades me that there's any reason to disrupt the procedural system of the city of Vienna that brings these things to council, where everybody in this community has the opportunity to comment once it's fully developed. Because the last thing I'll say is, for example, with budget and finance, we have things and they come, and then we look at them, and if there's an error, that opportunity comes up, and the public has the ability to discuss it before it's voted on by council. So for all those reasons, I don't see any purpose in amending and making these advisory committees subject to public comment. That's not what they're designed for.
If I can make one last legal comment. All right. One of the most contentious things that we deal with in this country is freedom of speech. What's said, who said it, where it's said, and so forth. There is a cost-benefit analysis that you have to make. We have the advisory boards that we've talked about, and I'm certainly against having public forums in those because I think they're just advisory. The balance that we've made in council is to have a public forum, because most of the time public forums are conducted in a civil manner. But most of the litigation that comes out of public forums comes out of people who don't want to be civil. For example, the individual that came in, I think it was in Santa Barbara in the 9th District, that decided that he would spend most of his time calling council Nazis and giving the Nazi salute. My concern with opening up public forums to all of the small commissions, the small lower boards, is simply the city opens itself up to the additional potential of liability if we're infringing upon people's rights. Now the balance with that comes is we have the public forum here in front of city council. City council is the body that makes the decisions. That's where you have to weigh what the cost benefit is. The cost of having the potential for people who come in and they say terrible things and they do terrible things and what have you, as long as they're not disruptive of the meeting, you leave it there, because we get the good, like Jack in the back, who actually brings us a problem and has the ability to voice that. The ordinance that I was instructed to draft increases the opportunity for mistakes to be made unnecessarily in boards that aren't going to benefit necessarily from public comment, because those people aren't the people that make the ultimate decisions. The ultimate decisions come from council, and if you want to have an impact on your ultimate decision, and you want to speak, you do it from the public forum there. Otherwise, you're just creating the potential for people who maybe are not as reasonable or are not as sophisticated when it comes to dealing with the public to say things to individuals who come to speak at public forums, and you're creating a problem for the city. So the cost is you're creating additional liability by increasing the public forum in boards that you don't necessarily do it, and what you're getting in return is you're getting essentially a handful of one or two people commenting on advisory boards that ultimately don't make decisions, but don't make substantive decisions, but make referrals to council. And essentially, that's the biggest problem I have with opening up the public forum to all of the sub-boards and subcommittees.
Mr. Rogers?
I'll say this, I have no problem with public forum, especially a lot of times I've got calls from citizens and they say, I've called about this. I mean, there's two junk cars a block away from the city building. I know they've been there like 4 months, and I know there are other places. And I know these people over and over again call our departments and say, hey, here's a problem. What can you do about it? Dogs running loose, I understand. It comes up about every year, the same problem. There is a newsletter. I can get the last newsletter probably, and it will have the ordinances for the dog ordinances in there where it says dogs should be or are required to be on leash. The problem is cats should also be on leash because it's in there too. How can you put a cat on leash? I don't know. But anyway, every year those are put in there, but people just don't seem to follow it. Especially, I have a problem at the community building. People in the ball field across from it letting dogs, when the dog park is a half a block away, and there's one for big dogs and one for little dogs, and they should go there and not there in that place. But as far as the ordinance is concerned, if it is a fenced-in area and the owner is there and the dog is on call, that's allowed. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, that's in the ordinance, but as far as I'm concerned, they should go to the dog park. But, I mean, streets, I mean, like Brenda was talking about, I understand what she's talking about. There are places that have been, streets have been built up, and when you try to turn a corner or something, there's a manhole there, your car goes down, and sometimes you're kind of afraid to do that. I do know that when the paving is done on most streets, that it is ground, and it is usually below manhole covers so that there isn't a bump there. But if it is not, they do have a ring that goes around there that raises that cover up. So I know those things, but there are citizens who have questions, and sometimes they don't get a good answer by calling the departments here in the city. So I understand public forum is needed, and I agree that it should be done.
All right, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor on first reading of the ordinance setting forth and adopting rules governing the public comment portion of the Vienna City Council meetings, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? The ordinance dies 3-3. Just as a final comment, Bruce, on what you just said, the issue with the streets, I've spoken to our public works director about that, and I would prefer that people, if they have issues in their particular neighborhoods or whatever, would call me. I'm not going to answer the questions and have Brenda speak to them because I will do that. But when they get finished, they are going to go back and tar some of the cracks that are there. Some of the manhole drains are low. They're going to raise those up. And there have been some issues with edging where when the skirting mechanism on the paver goes down, that there's some gaps. They're going to refill all those. So they will do a finish cleanup when they're done. But I don't know what neighborhood this person lives in. And so I do have a list of those that we're watching. to make sure that we get them all cleaned up when it's over with. So
Yeah,
if
but
there is
that's the whole
anyone,
key. We need
Yes.
a list, and then they
Right.
need to call you to
Right.
get put on that list.
Correct.
A lot of people will complain about it and not do anything or not call about problems.
well,
So
I've
they-
gotten several
they need
calls,
to get
and
on
like I
a
say, I have a
list.
list. So if anyone contacts you, if you just simply call, I go look at every one of them, and then I'll take Craig over and say, okay, here's the issue, and we'll make it right. So,
Yeah.
all right, with that, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Any council comments?
I know we're running over, so I'm gonna make this real brief. I'm gonna touch on three things, and I don't need answers or responses to them tonight, but it's maybe at a later time. I did ask at the last council meeting, and this pertains to Blacktop, how many actual miles of streets we paved. If you know that, great, and if not, I still would like to have that answer.
I'm sorry, Roger, I do have that answer.
Okay, good.
Unfortunately, when you asked me that, I asked it the next day.
That's fine.
I can't tell you, but I do know the answer.
That's fine. Later, that's fine. Johns Mansville, I'm not going to get into that discussion either, but I kind of had thought that we would probably have seen the approval for the lower portion and maybe some reports on the upper, so maybe at the next council meeting, we can discuss that as well. And the last thing that I had was the streetscape program. I don't know where we're at there, but I do know, based on the involvement that I had, that the grants can only be applied for November to January. Are we going to hit that this year, or is it going to go into the next November, January timeframe?
We had a public meeting with all of the business owners on Grand Central. There were some questions that were asked of Burgess and Nyepel for clarification. They have not gotten that answer back to us yet. So I cannot tell you, based on whatever the answers Burgess and Nyepel gives. There's been some comments about the design that was put out that a lot of the business owners do not like the kickouts and those kind of things because of how busy Grand Central Avenue is. So there are some issues that need resolved because if it's going to take a major redesign and eliminate the kickouts, then that'll require some additional work. Okay.
Which then, in reality, would probably kick us into the November 20 into January 21 timeframe.
Yeah, and I don't believe the time frame's an issue because you know as well as I do, the state's so slow with these things that, I mean, it'll be years before we see it anyway, but we would like to get it approved, so, but yes. All right?
That's all I had.
Okay, if you'll make a note for the next agenda for an update on Manville. Okay?
I can answer one of those questions real quick, because we're still working on production, but the objective, and we've discussed this before, and I think the way the DEP wants us to do this, even though the Riverside is done, they're gonna be moved out at the same time, is what my understanding is how the DEP wants to handle it. With respect to the production side, they're still working on it, and I can give you an update on that, but the Riverside's not gonna come out until the production side.
But we're pretty comfortable, based on what you just said, that the Riverside's done.
Yeah. I mean,
And the
I'm not
report will
aware of
come out
anything
at the
else.
same
Right,
time as
right.
the upper side.
I'm not aware of anything else we need to do on the Riverside. The production side's underway.
Just one more thing, Roger, you didn't ask about this one, but I'll do it anyway. We're almost finished with the last set of filters for wells 7 and 8. My guess is within the next 10 days, the project's finished. The electricity's done, the building's completed, the fencing is now done. We have to run the pumps and make sure that all of the bugs are worked out with that, and then after that, it will go online. All right? So, the article that came out on the television station yesterday regarding the numbers for the C8, I want to reiterate to everyone that we monitor those wells every month, and the level of contaminants is non-detectable. It is that clean. And so the EPA limit is 70 parts per billion, and we are below 1 part per trillion. And so our numbers are outstanding. The water for the city of Vienna is as good as can be made. And so I don't like when these people come in with these numbers that they can't justify and alert people that there's an issue, because I will be glad to show to anyone the lab results that show non-detect on every one of our well systems. And so the water that you're receiving has had every one of the pollutants removed through the carbon filtration system. So I was very happy that the WTAP did show those numbers and things last night, but it was totally unnecessary because our water system is in great shape. And once we get wells 7 and 8 back online, then we'll have the whole system balanced, and it'll make it a lot better for the distribution. So, yes, sir, Bruce.
I've heard about C8, but I do know that I think it's Borgwater by Marietta, whatever. There is a high amount of magnesium or something like that in the water in the Marietta system. I have not heard anything other than C8 in ours. What about magnesium or iron or some of the other
We test for
chemicals
everything.
like that?
We test for them all.
Okay.
Yes, the whole battery of them, and we're fine. Okay, every one.
So
Yes.
we're good.
We are good, absolutely good.
That sounds fantastic.
Yes, sir. All right, senior lunch Friday, beans and cornbread, Bruce is cooking.
Yes.
And our next council meeting will be on October the 24th. Meeting adjourned.